Hey y'all, it is Sunday, June 22nd. We are a week late because last Sunday was Father's Day, and apparently people either have fathers or children, and they want to do things with their fathers or children. So we don't have an agenda per se today. Um, I could I can ramble about a lot of crazy things that I've been
Well,
doing.
we did have at the last end of the last meeting, we were going to talk about one of the Timex books again.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing, Adam?
Oh, that's you're supposed to remember that part.
God, I can't do everything. We were going to talk about something else, and I'll see if I can remember what that was.
Okay.
Do
You
you
maybe
remember?
look at the summary of the AI summary, the transcript.
Oh, those things are terrible. But yeah, I'll look at that in a
Oh,
minute.
okay, then why do we have one?
It's just the side effect of having a meeting in Zoom. You get, a terrible AI summary.
Okay.
Do you remember what the book was that we wanted to talk about?
I think it was going to be, was it going to be this one?
Oh, well, the 1000 manual?
This one? Because we went over the 81 last time.
We did the 81, yeah.
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 So, there's also this crappy manual here. We could do the Pico manual. I'm kidding,
Oh,
of course.
I don't think I know
Um,
what you're talking about.
and I think we're working our way up to the 2068 manual eventually. That'll take more than one part.
That's the big kahuna. Yeah.
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 And
That's
I don't know anything about the 1000 manual really. So I'm all in the dark here. So unless we have a certain Ryan join us who's not here,
yeah.
I mean, who's up for talking about it if that's what we want to talk about soon or
Well,
eventually.
let's punt on that for a little bit.
Okay.
Hope that Ryan shows up. Um,
I'll
but
shoot him something real quick.
okay. But I want to call on Tim because he has said in email that ZXZine is almost ready to go. He's going to start laying it out. But Tim also has some other interesting stuff to talk about.
Well, there's not much to talk about ZXZine other than I'm basically almost done with it. I just got to do the layout and get it going. But the thing that I had a Zoom meeting this morning from organized by Martin Hill for the Sinclair QL. He advertised it on the QL forum, and I think 10 folks joined on the QL world. We had as far east as Romania, and I was the furthest west. We had two folks from the US, most from the UK, one guy from Germany, one from Romania, I think two from Italy also.
Oh,
But Martin was mostly his big thing is using the Sinclair network. So for on the Spectrum, you had interface one, you had two ports that were RCA, not RCA jacks, but they looked like had like headphone jacks. Um, they never, I don't think everyone ever, I don't think anyone's ever tried using an interface one on the 26 gate, but basically allowed you to hook up multiple spectrums on this QL side, same network, allowed you to plug in multiple QLs. But Martin's been working on software that lets you connect spectrums and QLs and maybe others on the same physical network.
wow.
He's been working with the Spectrum Next team to make sure that's supported there. He's looking at, what additional hardware you can do that will then allow emulators to do this. It's also talking about that network over IP,
Mm.
so you can use Ethernet. Um, but I thought that, well, gee, wouldn't it be interesting if, as everyone's talking about new hardware for the 2068, is if you actually did include these two ports that are essentially come off of interface one into whatever new hardware. And that would allow the 2068, the Spectrum, and the QL, and maybe others to actually physically network to each other. And he actually went over the whole protocol of how it works, and he's talking about something that's not CPU intensive, but something that's actually using a UART, so you're not really taxing the CPU. It's all offload to something else. Um, so I know if you have just a bare bones Spectrum with the interface one and a QL, you can probably get them to talk with some extra software. I don't know much about the Spectrum Next, but they are looking into it. So something that whoever's doing new hardware for the 26 date, that might be something to look into. And then maybe talk to Martin Hill as far as what's the take on the software side to
Tim,
implement. He
was
does
this
have a
the
C version.
Tim?
Go
Was
ahead.
was this the network that was used in classrooms, or is that something else?
Well, too sure because in the US, it was only implemented for the QL, and the only
Okay.
time I ever saw it working was when at a CATS meeting, we actually had about four different QLs all linked up, all accessing one single floppy. Most people didn't have multiple QLs. You didn't really interface them a whole lot, network them,
Hmm.
but you could. It was built in. There were some it wasn't working great, but there's some extra tools that would make it work better. On the Spectrum side, they might have, but I'm not too sure. That was all
Okay.
more on the UK side.
Sure.
Um, but I think the protocol said you can do 63 individual devices. And he did a demonstration
So this would have
where
been
he was
daisy
like
chained.
doing,
Yeah,
yes,
one
yes.
device to the
Okay.
next.
So
Yeah.
if one of them went down, then you were screwed.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, just the people past the one that went down.
Right. That's just those
Right,
people.
right. So, but I think his thing was he's doing in his environment is getting Spectrum and the QL to exchange data back and forth, and not have to worry about moving, USB drives or something like that between the two systems. So, but again, it was something he went into great detail. There's a recording of it. I just thought, as we're talking about new hardware, why not see about doing this network? And that way, if someone does have a QL or Spectrum that has this network, we can get the 2068 involved also. And I got someone encroaching.
So,
No, sorry, cat. Down.
um, he says this would use a UART to implement. Do you remember any of the details that he?
Oh, I think he's talking about doing it. Well, of course. So he was talking about, I think, using it with other machines. I think he may look at doing like a Commodore 64, other retro machines, getting involved. He talked about how if you run TCP/IP, let's say on a 64 or the Westby for the ZXZine or something like that, you've got a lot of layers going on.
Yeah.
Whereas the Sinclair network is a lot simpler, takes less effort to implement, it's easier. Um, Again, he was aiming it more for just connecting retro machines to each other,
Hmm.
and then also bringing in the emulators because they're there. A lot of people are using them. So
Oh,
I think his idea is that if you have a physical QL, a physical Spectrum, it would just plug in. You might actually need a little extra software just to make some improvements. Because I know that I think the Spectrum and the QL, their protocol is just a little bit different. So it might mean a little extra software just so the two can start talking to each other at the protocol level.
Yeah.
So
So, uh, Gustavo is actually a good person for this, but I don't think he's with us today because he loves the idea of implementing the interface one network. Um, so
now
maybe
I
next time.
don't know much about the Spectrum Next, but they might support it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Does someone have a Spectrum Next that
Uh,
might know more about it?
Carl Miles does, but he's not here.
yeah. Yeah. So it's funny that this came up because um, last weekend I was uh, fooling around with Claude, which is this AI. Um,
There's so many AIs. I mean,
there's so
gosh.
many AIs,
Oh my
exactly.
God. Yeah, gosh.
Um, and well, long time ago, somebody had mentioned the idea of using a Raspberry Pi Pico W, which is the one that has the Wi-Fi module on it, as a like an emulation for the UART chip that's in the 2050 modem. And so I putzed around with Claude, and uh, I did that. I said, can you design me a circuit board that would interface the Pico to the 2068, and on the Pico side, emulate the 8251, which is that chip, the UART chip in the modem. And I had to upload the data sheet of all things because it needed to know how to emulate the stuff. So it wrote all the software. It it designed circuits schematics for me using ASCII codes. which I then translated to easy EDA. And so I have some circuits. I have some printed circuit boards rather coming on probably on Monday to try
Well,
to
that's a
test it.
fast turnaround.
Oh, it's
Holy
insane.
smokes.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So I'm going to try that out, and if it works, it would mean that you could plug this thing into the expansion slot on the 2068, bring up a modem. I'm sorry, a terminal program. Any of the old terminal programs, because it's on the same ports. It's going to look like a 2050 modem to the 2068, except that it will take AT commands, those Hayes AT commands, and you'll use those AT commands to connect to IP addresses elsewhere, to configure your Wi-Fi, connect to IP addresses, etc.
Interesting.
So, but it's all software. I mean, once you get past the interfacing portion, it's all software. And Tim, it could probably be the software that runs on the thing could probably be either extended or rewritten to be interface mode 1 network through Wi-Fi, which would be crazy. Yeah, share the link to the video in the chat if you can.
I'll have to watch the QL board to see when the video comes.
Oh,
the
okay.
link comes up on the video.
Oh, okay.
So we had it. I had to leave about 8 this morning. It started at 2 p.m. London time, which is 6 a.m. my time. So I was on it for a couple hours and didn't make breakfast. So it was early morning for me.
So they went beyond 2 hours.
Wow.
Well, once the 2 hours hit, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't know how far they went. They may have gone too far. There was no set time I'm aware of. But Martin Hill was doing a fair bit of talking, had presentations. Other people you might not, well, I don't know if you know these folks. Anybody here know who Dilwyn Jones is?
Yeah, he's one of the QL guys.
He's a vendor, he's a writer. Yes. How about Marcel Kilgus?
Doesn't ring a bell.
He wrote QPC2, the emulator, the primary emulator for the QL under Windows.
Oh wow.
Who else was there? Bruce Nichols, who was another trader slash vendor slash. So those are the primary ones I remember. I've actually met some of those guys. Dilwyn I met in the UK. Marcel came here. So I mean, Marcel was in his very early 20s, maybe like 18 when he created the first QL emulator for DOS. So he was a really young guy at the time. This was years ago. So, and Dilwyn's been around for the QL since '84. So,
oh wow, okay, wow.
They calls him Mr. QL. Oh, he's got one of the primary QL websites for downloading software. If it's anywhere, it's going to be on Dilwyn's site.
Okay.
Just since it's handy, why don't you say what it is? Which site is that?
Oh, it's actually long now. Just look up Dilwyn Jones QL. That's the best way. It moved. It's now over on part of the QL forum. That's the problem with providers. So the QL forum, hey, we'll just link you to one of our website.
Okay.
And it's funny thing with the QL forum was in the UK, because of UK laws implementing new procedures, it was like we can't do all this sort of stuff, follow the rules. So they actually moved it to be hosted in the US now. There's a guy in North Carolina that's hosting the QL forums, because keeping it in the UK would have been just the rules made it more complex. Just like the EU rules for making hardware. If you're vending a hardware, you have to do all these. We have to certify it and do this and do that, and they stopped making hardware in the UK and selling it because of that. So,
Huh.
Oh,
that's
news.
Great. That's bizarre that the forum is now in the US. Well,
where else would a QL forum be?
Right. I mean, the home, of course, of all things QL, right? And Tim, you said that you're almost done, or I'm sorry, you're going to start laying out the ZXZine.
Yeah. Basically, all the articles I need to start the layout. So I'm
And
not sure how many pages it's going to be, but I think it'll be almost as long as the last one, so it
okay,
should be decent sized.
um, there have been a couple things that have come across the email list, and I have seen Adam say, "Gee, it would be good if this was in the ZXZine." Without giving away the entire contents, did any of those make it into ZXZine?
There's only one article from someone, not myself. I'll put it
Okay.
that way.
Oh, okay.
Okay. um, and then the other thing that we were kind of talking about before we started was if somebody, wanted to get a hard copy of this, um, there are multiple like print on demand places on the web. I mean, I've used Lulu to do booklets. I'm trying to think of some of the others. I've used Mixam to do booklets. I would not recommend Mixam for
Hmm.
your zine just because it's kind of um, pricey. Um, what do you have any issues with folks, taking it, uploading it somewhere, and getting their own printed copies?
No, not at all. In fact, I think it's released with a Creative Commons license, so it can be distributed. I think people have uploaded it to the Internet Archive, so it
Yep.
can be uploaded anywhere. So no,
Okay.
I don't have any problem. Uh, I wish I could see how many people download it from my website, but I can't. But oh well, you know, the more it goes out there, the better.
Hundreds of
So
thousands. That's how you know.
yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay, good, good. Uh, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know about it's interesting to see what you pick to put in there, um, Tim. It's also just interesting to see. I mean, the content itself, you put a lot of effort into this thing, and uh, it strikes me as a bit of you want to learn how to do something, you set out down that path, you write an article about it, and it goes into the CX Is that fair?
Or if something strikes my interest,
Strikes your
um,
interest? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I'm perfectly fine if other people say, "Well, this strikes my interest, write up an article." Great. I mean, the more the merrier. If other people want to do that, I stopped doing writing for a while. Then I had some ideas. I'm like, oh man, I don't have a methodology for doing this. So I did like one and posted on the forums. Like, okay, that was sort of interesting. But that's why started doing ZXZine again back
Yeah.
in
Well,
2015 because I had probably then about a number of years without having doing any of it, article writing. So
well, as we know, Ryan took off and just decided he was going to walk down the path of the define function and start exploring that in detail. So we, that's that's been his journey lately. So maybe he'll talk about that a little later. And Ryan, now that you're here, I had mentioned earlier when the meeting first started that we were going to try to talk about the Timex 1000 manual and we would have people talk about that. And maybe you can talk about it a bit because you seem to know quite a bit. And the other thing I want to talk about now that I was thinking about it, because I think it's the most, it's one of the most, my favorite part of the playing around with these classic computers is the history of our use of them and how we use them. And since that thread was started and everyone talked about how they got their first Sinclair systems and sometimes other systems even before that. We probably don't need to talk about it in this meeting, but I just find that so fun and interesting, and they were all a fun read. So if anyone here contributed to that and posted their thoughts there, thank you. It was really fun.
And for the folks who have not posted their thoughts and their little history, please do uh, post it in the groups.io because, like Adam said, this is something that is just absolutely fascinating to me. I mean, we all have sort of a unique path for how we landed on owning a Sinclair or a Timex Sinclair, and how we got there, and then what we did with it, and the sort of trials and tribulations of learning are really really interesting.
And we're here now, and I wasn't even there then. So I mean, it's still an interesting. system.
We're still talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not on the groups.io list, I'll post it in the chat, and I'll make sure it's in the little notes that appear underneath the meeting recording. Please, join the group, because it's not a spammy group. It's not noisy. People, post really interesting stuff. There's a guy, Andy Dansby, who has a blog that I've kind of looked at once in a while, and I finally emailed him a few weeks back and said, hey, you should post this stuff over at the list, and he did start jumping in and posting. He's working on there's a math thing called a Bresenham function, and it's a calculation that you do for plotting lines that are not that don't perfectly follow raster lines on your display. So basically diagonals, right? Anything that's between perfect horizontal and 90 degrees requires some kind of math if you want that line not to be super jaggy. So the Bresenham function figures out which pixels you need to turn on in order to get a nice looking line. Very time intensive, very processor intensive in BASIC. And so he's working his way through in his blog posts about how he programmed it in BASIC, and now he's programming it the same, writing the same function in assembly language. This is important if you, for instance, want to write one of those programs that emulates a radar screen, as I did too many times on an Apple when I was a youngster. Anyway,
I always just thought like that they were pre-drawn, those little radar screens, and not like done, you know what I mean? Like they were not a sprite because there's no sprites, but pre-drawn graphics, characters.
it depends on which computer, and
Sure, I understand.
yeah.
Yeah. But like a game that's 3D or something like that would definitely have to be done that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he talks a little bit on his website, about how he got started. And it's weird because not weird. He's an American, but he focuses mostly on the Spectrum. As you do when you don't have a disk drive system or other things, and you decide, I've had enough of this tape nonsense.
So I have a quick question to follow up with that. So I remember when I used to use the Amiga and I was using like they had anti-aliasing like for lines. So but it wouldn't take because there's not enough colors on the spectrum, right, to have anti-aliasing, I guess, when you do a diagonal line.
Well, that's
So,
what the Bresenham function plotting tries to do, is reduce the
oh,
amount of aliasing. But yeah,
oh,
it's difficult on the Spectrum and the 2068 because
with the lack of
you don't have a lot of
colors.
colors.
I see. Oh, well,
Yeah,
that's even more impressive then.
but doesn't the Pico video not have this limitation?
The Pico video, with its ULA plus mode, will get you more colors. Yeah, and you could get a better resolution out of it. That would be an interesting thing to see. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
But that may have been a challenge to Ryan. I don't know.
No, I was thinking more of not an actual resolution, but an applied effect.
So, what do you mean, like the fake scan lines that you've
Well, sort of. Um, like it might. Yeah, I guess it could. Like if a pixel hasn't been set, it could be eligible for anti-aliasing the surrounding pixels, for example.
Hmm.
But it's nothing. It's not something, and it would use the colors it could do outside of the defined colors, but it would have nothing to do with the display memory. It would just be on its own. It would be a filter of sorts. Yeah. It would basically say, hey, this pixel is not I guess you had to have some buffer that was tracking pixels being set and or not.
Right. Right. Yeah, I
Possibly.
don't know that the
I can use this with my own coloring, and the system has no knowledge, but I'm using it to anti-alias.
maybe Jeff Burrell's not here today, but he can speak to how much CPU power is left in the Pico, because I know the portion that generates the video signal is running on one core, and the portion that watches the 2068 memory and all of its weirdness in terms of how stuff is laid out and translating that to VGA runs on the other core. But he, like I said, he managed to implement the ULA plus, so there's probably enough CPU power to do some additional interesting things, like you were saying.
Yeah, I guess I'm not too familiar with ULA plus, though, unfortunately.
It's a pretty obscure subset that I think Andrew Owen and maybe some others came up with. I'm not entirely positive. It looks great, but you have to write all these specific palettes, and you have to do a lot of hoop jumping. I don't think it's a on the Spectrum side. There's not a lot of CPU time running on the Z80 to like write a full color game or something.
Oh, so it's for displaying a colorful screen?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Phil, Paul, I'm trying to see who else has been here and who hasn't been here recently. Paul,
what's up?
I just want to check in with you. I see your drum kit's no longer there, but
Okay. Yeah, first of all, you guys are still over my head with all the hardware, but in the IO group, I saw someone talking about Linux on the Zilog Z80 chip. Was that just for like get my hands in front of the camera, for like just a little standalone microcomputer for the Timex? Did I misinterpret something? Someone was going to try to do Linux based on the using the Z80.
Yeah. So Alan Cox, who used to be involved in doing Linux distros back a long time ago, stopped contributing to Linux at some point, and wrote a thing called Fuzix, Fuzix, and it is a Linux-like operating system for small 8-bit CPUs. From what I've read on the Fuzix webpage, it can run on the 2068, but I think that there's some additional hardware requirements. I'm not positive, but I think it can run on the Spectrum. And I can't imagine what you would accomplish with a tiny Linux-like system on a Z80.
Yeah, I understand and I agree, and I'm like, really? Okay.
Now, we're not talking about a multi-threaded operating system here or anything silly.
I don't think Fuzix is. Let me just go back to the webpage and see if
I mean, I wouldn't call that silly. That would be awesome. I'm just saying, like, I was just thinking it would be because I did see that post you're talking about. I just thought they were talking about like something that looked like a DOS-like environment or something like that. But that was in my imagination. I didn't read anything beyond that.
Yeah, my oldest son is in computer, he's a software engineer and stuff. And so I tell him about all this retro stuff going on. He goes, oh, it's huge, this whole retro. And I keep telling him all the stuff that people are trying to do, with all the hardware you guys are designing and making. Awesome, by the way. He's like, really? And then I happened to text him that the meeting was coming up here, and I didn't know am I misinterpreting this whole thing with Linux and whatnot? Because, he works for Lockheed and stuff like that. And, so they do all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah.
I still love the Timex computers. I'm just not very good at programming them. I kind of play the games. That's all.
I gotcha.
Well, so Fusix is written, like I was saying, it's written for small CPUs, but I'm looking at the webpage, and a lot of the CPUs are Z80 based, but there are a couple 16-bit, like a 68K version,
Yes.
or a Z280, which is a little bit more powerful than a Z80, or the TI 99.
Yep.
9.5, which is 16-bit CPU. Let me just go to the GitHub and see what.
We ought to have a challenge to see which is the most obscure computer we can talk about during each meeting. So far, that one wins. I've not heard of it.
Oh, really? Okay.
The TI 99.5?
No, it's a CPU.
Oh,
So
I've not heard of it either. Is that the one in the 99.4A?
No, it's actually the one in the 99/2, which never got really released.
Okay.
And it was supposed to compete with the 1000, the Timex Sinclair 1000.
Okay, you've pointed that one out to us before.
Yeah.
Okay.
You may have heard of the Timex Sinclair 1000 before.
That one I have heard of.
Okay.
Yeah, that little doorstep thing that's holding the door open.
Yep, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, so Fusix, from what I understand, and it's been a while since I've read it, read the documentation, but it can run on a Z80. It needs, a certain amount of memory and some other challenges, which I don't think that anybody has really addressed, because Alan is based in the UK.
Oh, all right. Anyway, so since you called on me, it's like that's what really, just in the past couple of days or so, this thing was going on. I'm like, what? So I was talking to my son Patrick, and he's just howling about this, but he understands this retro 8-bit, and whatnot, and it's like, still, I just love the Timex computers. I just play them.
Paul, I think we asked you the first time that you came, first or second time that you came and joined us, but how did you come into the the Timex world?
Okay. So yes, back in 81, 82, I was a senior at Penn State, and there was all sorts of the advertising going on, in print. And I'm like, what? No way. So there was no way I was going to take the time to solder everything. No. So I ordered, the 2068, and actually, no, that's right. I ordered the ZX81. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. And with the RAM pack. And so we got it all hooked it up to the TV, and it's like, oh, this is so cool. And then we tried to do something with the 16K, and it wasn't working. So, being with a bunch of geeks, nerds, whatever, we opened it up, right? And it looked like one of the capacitors was cracked. So we went to an electronics shop, and the guy's like, well, if you do that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, we take all responsibility. So we changed out the cap, put a new one in, and everything worked great.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And then it's like, now what? Still in game mode. Like, well, now you get to try to do something with this. I'm like, all right, well, I graduated, got my first job, and I tried to do a little bit more. And that's whenever I got the color one, the 2068. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be way cool. But what do you do with it? Okay, I'm still in game mode. And it's like, well, okay. So I started buying games, right, with the cassette tape, of course. And I got fairly good at it. And I'm like, yeah, but how do people do all this stuff? I mean, I get Fortran. I have one trimester of Fortran, and it's a good thing I had a comp sci major on my floor. Okay. Never used it before or since. Okay, engineers had to take it. And I'm like, okay. But I just fell in love with the whole idea of what Clive did with the keywords. Okay. And so that's what really hooked me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I get this. And I did typed in some of the games from the book. Okay. But yeah, I had the ZX81. Oh, so we were joking around because this is a microcomputer. We actually were microsurgeons to take out the capacitor to put in a new capacitor. It's like, hey, of course, we just had fun with that. Okay. And so that all went well. And then the 2068, and and then I just kind of hung on to everything, moved back and forth across the country a bunch of times. So my computers have more miles than most people. And and then David, as you know, I happened to get a stash,
Yeah.
which a lot of it got sent to you and then available to the group, right? But I still have all of the main hardware, and it's like, well, is it really fair for me to keep all of that if I'm not going to do anything? So looking for opinions from the group, it's like, this stuff is classic, very well taken care of and everything else. And I'm like, yeah, but it's mine, but it's like, it doesn't do any good to keep all this stuff, which is why I sent so much to you, Dave. And then it's like, can I part with some of the stuff that's just gold?
Yeah.
And see if anyone can really make use of this stuff. So I got rid of, like, if I had this much, I got rid of this much. And so this stuff right here is very precious, but I'm like, if I'm not going to do anything with it before it rusts away or something, have someone else do something.
Paul, I think it was the last meeting we had. I think it was David who posted or talked about a video that was about a Russian computer, and it was put in the links, I think, or at least he talked about it, and I looked it up on YouTube. And this guy, and the video was called "Does this Russian computer work?" or something like that. And it was a Sinclair clone made in Russia,
Yeah.
and he opened it up, and inside it was literally rusted out, and it was supposedly new, and if it was new, I don't think so, but it had parts that had fallen off of it, and so he fixed those, and then of course he turned it on and didn't work. So he goes, "This one will go on my workbench." So yeah,
So that's
so
where
I'm
I'm
sure
at,
it'll stay
guys.
there.
We love our stuff, but it's like, but it's good to have it used.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And David, I'll send you a separate email with some more stuff that's going on.
Okay. Well, the folks, on the groups.io list are, I suspect you would have some takers. And there's this joke about the cat distribution system where, apparently, you get a cat because one has just picked you. I think we can have a similar Timex, Sinclair distribution system. That's certainly what I enable when people send me stuff. I'm like, cool. I'll scan the documentation. I'll archive the digital media, and then find a sucker to send it to, and it can be it can go into their collections, and whether it gets displayed on their shelves or in active use or becomes.
I just want to make clear I heard what you said, and then you said you'd find a sucker.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, just want to so a sucker is born every day.
Yes,
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. I had this much stuff. Okay, and now I'm kind of getting down because now someone else has the rest of this stuff.
That's correct. Yes. And Paul's stuff has, moved through my house and out into other people's houses.
That's the idea. That's the
right.
idea.
The distribution system. And actually I have just like a bunch of, I don't know, small things like beat up Timex Sinclair 1000 boxes, boxes that sit in somebody's basement and like the bugs have nibbled on them. So
yes.
Right. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And to me, it's not worth taking pictures and putting on the website and whatever. I'm just like, I'm I'm going to VCF. I'm packing my car as full as I can with this stuff, and I'm crossing my fingers that it's not coming back with me. People walking up to my table will be gifted things if too much time goes by without it, without them walking off with it. But yeah, it Paul, you bring up an excellent point, which is, what do we do with all these things that we're not using? And we've talked about this in the past, and there's not a great single location that we could send it to, like a museum,
Mhm.
which is unfortunate. But
Oh, yeah, the Jupiter Ace, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Excuse
does
me.
there need to be a central location for some of this stuff? Like if the book is available, I mean, like these books were printed like thousands of copies, unless, so it's not, if my copy of, my Timex 1000 manual disappears, maybe in 1,000 years it'll make a difference because that might have been the one copy that survived. But for now, I think it's okay, you know?
well, I mean, it's not that. I mean, we have managed to preserve, on archive.org, the things that can be digitized,
Sure.
a lot of what I would, just say the more common things, right? And we've even gotten down pretty far into the harder to find stuff like user group
Yeah.
newsletters, right?
Yeah. And I was glad to be able to archive those software programs for the 1000 by that guy who wrote them here in Albuquerque too.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. That
exactly.
was that was a shock.
And
Yeah.
and also then your site largely is an index to those archives,
That's
right?
exactly right. Thank you, Ryan. You got it.
Because otherwise they're just higgledy piggledy around archive.org.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's important. So yeah, as far as like a central place for physical stuff, the problem you have there is that that will go away because it becomes a big pile of stuff someone wants to get rid of eventually.
Yeah.
And that happened here with the museum exhibit. It went away.
Yeah. I think we just have to, it's kind of like stamp collecting where, the folks who do stamp collecting tend to be over a certain age, and, they spend a lot of time talking about how do we recruit younger stamp collectors. Uh, we, uh, we, we're doing okay at recruiting younger participants. Like,
It has to be organic. So like, they come in and get interested, right? Versus, I guess 20 years ago at this point, me and some friends were in the Linux user group back in the early days.
yeah, yeah,
And they were like, oh, we need to recruit more people. So what they would do is they would have an event where they had a Linux install party. And this is where they would get unsuspecting, disgruntled Windows users to come. They would put Linux on their machine as a better operating system and then say, have a nice day. And then they would come to the next meeting going, what the hell did you do to my machine? And they were already back to talking because they were just a bunch of sysadmins talking amongst themselves, really, at a meeting. So
yeah, yeah. But so Paul, we'll find someone younger. I mean, no offense, but we'll find someone younger to shepherd it. I think that's the best way to.
Well, you know what this reminds me of? I mean, it's not even in the same spectrum whatsoever, no pun intended there. But my son was visiting from Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, and he brought along his guitar and he played us some songs. And my wife and I, we decided we'd get ourselves a guitar. And then I went on vacation. I was gone to Texas for quite a while after that. And this week I've been playing, and I'm like trying to figure out how the hell I can stretch my fingers from one
Oh,
from one place to another. And I'm like, this is never going to be possible. And I'm thinking of David, who plays the bass. And I'm like, well, if David can do it, certainly I can do it. So, and, like,
well, Adam,
so
I want to tell you that the reason that people play the bass is because they can't play the guitar.
is that right? Okay, maybe I'll have to play the bass then. Yeah. But it's so, I mean, everything like that's new to us is new, and then we learn a bit about it. So, this when I haven't really delved much in my story lately, but I got my 2068 quite a few years ago now. But I got mine just because it's a Z80 basement system, and once I got it and I was going through the manual, I was like, this system's way better than I read about online. And so that's how I joined the Yahoo groups and things like that.
I was gonna say because you were active on Yahoo and you were active a long time ago.
Yes, I was.
Relatively speaking,
Yeah, right.
I don't
Yeah.
want to get into dates or anything, but
Right. Yeah.
let's just say it was a while ago.
Yeah. But it was because I got a 2068 and I kind of wanted one because it was a Z80 based system and I like the Astrocade, which is Z80 based, and
Mhm.
so I picked it up. Yeah. And now they're very expensive, so I got it at a good time.
Yes. Um, hey Jeff, can you talk to us about using the Jupiter Ace emulator on the 2068? Because I have tried that and it didn't go very far. So I'm really curious to hear what you've done.
Okay, I don't remember how I burned the prom. But the big thing I want to do with this, my little joystick interface project, my Bado keyboard that I'm still working on. And a friend that's better at woodworking than me is actually building the actual keyboard, and I'm still working on the software. But what I hope to do is put that cartridge in there and then write some fourth primitive, or what do they call it, words or vocabulary, add vocabulary, so I can interface to the joystick port through the I/O. Use the fourth words, interface with the I/O ports for the joystick, and then talk to the sound chip and change the video modes. And I'm pretty sure I had that working. I may have to try the cartridge again. But yeah, I think I took the emulator that I was using with Fuse, took
Yeah.
out the leader for Warievo, and then burned the prom and put it in my 2068. I thought using your adapter card. I'll have to, I mean, maybe something got fuzzy in my mind. I didn't do that, but I thought I did. So,
Well, I agree with you. I've done the same thing.
yeah.
I've taken the fourth ROM from, like you said, the Warievo distribution,
Mhm.
and burned a ROM and cartridge and stuck it in my 2068. But um maybe I don't know enough about fourth, and this is the other part that I'm kind of puzzled by is the Jupiter Ace was wasn't it closer to the ZX81 than it
Mhm.
was to the Spectrum in terms of
Yeah, because character based as
hardware?
far as like the screen memory and stuff. Mhm.
What about loading and saving files?
Okay, now that's a kicker because I would like sooner or later be able to have the TS Pico put in the back of it so I could save. Because right now I have to retype everything in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know it's a different way of saving to tape. I don't remember what the format is, but I don't think it's compatible with like the ZX81 or
Okay. It's an 8K ROM, right?
yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay. Well then,
As far as I remember it, I thought that the hardware was very close to the 81.
Brian, I agree. I think the hardware is reasonably close, but nah, I don't know enough about the Jupiter Ace. But the people who designed the Jupiter Ace worked on the 81 and maybe the
Mhm.
Spectrum. I remember reading the story somewhere on the internet, but they left Sinclair and went off and designed their own their own little doodad because fourth was going to be the next big thing in 1983. Everybody was going to go fourth.
I think their idea was that fourth uses less memory,
Yes.
and so
Faster because you
since
can
it
turn on error checking too to make it like 25% faster. And then the redefinable characters. See, that'll be nice for my project because that's why the 2068 and the Timex Texas Instruments 994A, where I could redefine to get the French character set. Well, that's one thing this Jupiter Ace will give me. I can do the French character set too.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Maybe I'll go back to it. Jeff, have you tried Treeforth? I mean, that's for the 1000.
No, and I'm not real familiar with like the fourths, and that's why I kind of wanted to get Rapunzel for the ZX81 since I got the manual.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to get the software, but no, and I haven't tried Treeforth and some of the other things.
So the reason I say, I mean, I've not looked at it's been a long time since I've looked at the ACE and its resources. I know that the manual for the ACE is pretty good. But Treeforth, the manual is 3/4 of an inch thick. It's 8.5 by, I think it's single-sided pages though. It's 8.5 by, it's on archive.org. So if you just go to the Treeforth page on my website, is it called Treeforth? It was called Pluriforth at first, but I think it's called Treeforth. You'll find a link to the manual, which is amazing. I mean, if you've not read any other fourth resources, it's a really, really good manual.
And I've downloaded a couple free ones from the fourth website, Brady or Bohr. I can't remember the guy's name, but there's two that he made public domain, so I downloaded them. And then there's like 5 fourth implementations for the TI-99.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of familiar with some of those because when TI got out of the thing, they gave you the 300-page manual for the TI fourth. And somewhere I think I've still got that manual. So I know there's some real fourth enthusiasts too for the TI. So when I get ready to port to that, I've been talking about a couple of guys getting together with them and going through the fourth a little bit better.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Didn't someone have Hog Wild?
Yeah. Shoot, I forgot that guy's name. But yeah, there was a company out of, where were they? Shreveport or something like that.
Yeah.
Hog Wild was the company, but maybe also the fourth.
Yes.
He sold fourth for a lot of different systems.
Right.
And one of those,
I don't remember if I sent that to you or not.
Maybe it was you that the tape came from. The 2068 like Fig Fourth or something. And I'm not sure if it's X Fourth was another one that was available. But yeah, and then I've seen some of his newsletters and I've archived some of those newsletters. It's really interesting. The fourth one is very weird.
I have Hogwild Fourth somewhere. If you're interested in it, I'll try and dig it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I still think I have the manual.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, because we only have a partial manual for that.
There was one other person in our Timex Sinclair group in Ottawa that was into fourth, and he had he had the Hogwild Fourth, but what he said was bad about it is it ran by doing ROM calls.
Okay.
So a lot of the functionality came from just taking the parameters and then passing it to the appropriate ROM routine. So I really don't know if that's good or bad, but he didn't seem to think it was all that great.
Sounds like it would be okay, right? But
there was also Abrasoft Fourth.
Yes.
That was Spectrum oriented.
Yep.
Right, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and there was,
I think there was something called Quill, which was put out as a game development software, but it was actually just another flavor of Fourth.
Oh, how bizarre! I didn't know that. Okay,
that's for the Spectrum. I've heard of that. I think for the Spectrum.
Yeah,
actually.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I did have, and I don't remember if I sent it to David, HighSoft C.
No.
Yeah, I have HighSoft C, but be aware that it's integer only.
Oh, okay, so very basic stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. There was also ZX Fourth for it was Arctic, so it was for the 1000.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too bad no one actually knows how to program it except for Jeff.
Yeah. About the only language I found other than BASIC that had full floating point math was the high-soft Pascal. But there was also something called Mega Basic, which was supposedly Timex, ZX Spectrum specific, but I could never get it to work.
Cool.
We should have another contest each meeting where rather than just only the computers, we have that's very hard to remember, no one's ever heard of. We have the most obscure language as well, computer programming language. I don't know if there's anything I haven't heard of this week, but there's
And I
some
think
weird ones out
somebody
there.
also did logo for the Spectrum.
Oh, that makes sense. Well,
Yeah.
I think Jeff takes the cake for that, because there was a fourth like language written by some dude out in San Francisco or something called RPNZL, and we don't have the software for it, but Jeff had the manual, which is scanned and available on archive.org. And I think somewhere it might have come from you, Paul, a 1-sheet or 2-sheet newsletter from the guy who put it out, also available on archive. And it was there were ads for it in Sync and maybe Timex Sinclair User. I don't remember if I saw it anywhere else. Whoever wrote it, was very prolific in advertising.
I'm gonna have to go through my stuff again and see what else is going on, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, cool.
The name must stand for something, I guess.
Well, RPN I think stood for reverse Polish notation.
Oh, okay.
ZX81 language.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a convoluted sort of.
Yeah. Oh, I figured it stood for Rapunzel or something.
Well, and that's the thing is, it exactly. It you look at it and you're like, oh, Rapunzel.
And Tim probably remembers, I think the QL had BCPL, which was the precursor to C. And I tried programming that too, because APL, I got a book on APL and then BCPL. But yeah, that just didn't jive. And I don't remember whatever became of that copy, but I think the QL had BCPL and C.
Oof.
I've never seen it, but I was wondering if anybody ever programmed a modula.
No.
I did in school.
So Ryan, was it a course?
Yeah, it was data structures.
Okay.
Module 2 for the work in the book. In fact, I should have that down here somewhere.
Well, the reason I asked that is because Pascal was a
very
popular teaching language for a while, and then Nicholas Wirth came out with Modula 2. Was there? I don't recall there was just a plain old Modula. Anyway, he came out with Modula, and then I think most places that taught comp sci just bypassed it and went on right to C or some other write only language. Oh, hang on. Let me
There is still a very active Free Pascal group.
Interesting.
Wow.
The guy who wrote, what was it called? Partial Pascal for the 1000. So imagine this, a Pascal compiler. It was like a 3-part system. You had to write your code in one thing and load it into another thing, which I think compiled it, and then a third thing which actually ran it. But it was Pascal on a ZX81 or 1000. He then went on to write a Modula compiler for the Mac. So
Well, since they're basically the same system.
basically, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there's no difference. Hey Phil, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I just wanted to pick on you and see how you're doing. And you told us your sort of origin story. Um, and I'm trying to remember, are you more of a 2068 person or a QL person?
Uh, well, right now, the only thing I have working is a 2068. I'm trying to, I got a couple of questions. I'm not skilled enough to repair my QLs. Is there anybody out there that repairs these things?
Tim? I'm not asking you to repair it, Tim. I'm just asking if you know of anybody that does.
And my second,
Not right off.
I know there's one company in England that kind of advertises that they repair them. I'm just hoping there was somebody, on this side of the ocean that I don't have to pack the thing up and ship it overseas. But I was kind of intrigued. Maybe y'all could tell me about this new Kickstarter for the Spectrum Next.
Oh,
Uh,
all right. Well,
and it, yeah, when
uh,
from what
think
I've
about the
seen,
next at all?
they talk about a QL core for it, and
Yeah, that's right. I heard something about a QL core. Do you know anything about the next at all, Phil?
no.
Okay, so a million years ago or 10-ish, um, this guy started designed a what is now the core of the next, and it was an FPGA based board that could do spectrum and a variety of other things. And some other folks in the spectrum community hooked up with him and did a Kickstarter to uh, uh, build this thing called the Next, right? And they got the designer of the ZX81 and the Spectrum and the QL to do the case for it, make it look like it belonged in the family, as it were. And it went like crazy. But then also the pandemic happened, and so things like kind of went slow for quite a while. I don't remember the initial number of systems on the first Kickstarter, but it was.
I think it was 1,500 or something like
Was
that.
it okay?
Yeah.
And it's a nice little system. I have two complaints with it. The first complaint is that the keyboard is shifted off to the left, I think, and it feels like you have no place for your left. It feels like your left hand is always going to fall off the unit. But that's just me. And then my other complaint is that there's not a 2068 core, and I'm not really a Spectrum dude. So I think I backed the first Kickstarter. I played with it a few times, and then I found somebody else who would be more interested in playing with it.
And the other thing was that they didn't put the little bumps on the F and the J case, so you couldn't orient your fingers properly, especially if you were doing touch typing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And because of that, your hand would drift and you would end up hitting I think it was the graphic shift key all the time, and you couldn't get out of the graphic mode. I mean, I never really figured out how to. So, I mean, I got into the habit of having to do multiple saves because I never knew when I was accidentally hit that graphic shift key and I would lose the whole thing because I couldn't get out of
You
the,
get out. That bizarre. Okay.
yeah.
Um,
So, that's one of the reasons why I usually used a PC-based text program to type in the program, and then use the text-to-BAS program to translate it, because otherwise it was just a case of frustration.
Mm.
But even then, using the text-to-bus utility, once it hit a mistake, it would freeze and you couldn't do anything. So you had to take your chip or flash drive or whatever you were using to save your program, go back to your PC, load it up in text mode to correct the error, come back, come
Mm.
back and try to recompile it, find out that you had another error about three lines down, take it out again, go back. There was supposed to be a PC version of text to basic that works on a PC, but I've never been able to get it to work. It's one of those things that seems to sit at me. I uploaded it and I installed it, but the whole thing just seems to sit there and go at me.
So, David, ZMake Base instead of text to base. ZMake Base is a more recent, more it's better in terms of error reporting. So we can talk about that when we meet. But Phil, then there was a second Kickstarter. They switched to a different FPGA chip, and I don't know what they added in terms of features. But if you are interested in owning a machine that does most of the Spectrum models, and I think I heard that there was going to be a Commodore 64 core.
Well, I do have a Kickstart too.
Yeah, right. We're talking about the one that's coming up. I think there's going to be a Commodore 64 core as well. So,
It's going to have a QL core too.
That I don't know for sure, but let me just look on the interwebs and see what they say.
I heard that.
Yes, somebody started a QL core in December of last year. So, yeah, interesting. And it looks reasonably enough like a QL that that you can use it. I think it has fewer keys. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think it has the function keys that the QL has, but we'll see. And the price is not terrible. I mean, I don't remember what the second Kickstarter price was, but I think the first Kickstarter price was 300 and change or something.
It took like several years to get them though, right? I think Carl said he like waited two years or something before he got his.
It took
Like
several
it was
years.
a long time.
It took a long time. Yes, the pandemic happened, and all sorts of things got thrown into disarray. I mean, they plugged away as best they could within that time frame, but there was just all sorts of challenges.
Not to interrupt, or sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the two Kickstarters had different problems. The first one is they learned how difficult it is to manufacture something, and because they had problems with the keyboard, and then with Kickstarter 2, that's when the pandemic slapped them around, and they were finished with the design with a Xilinx FPGA, and then all of a sudden they became unobtainium. So they had to switch FPGAs. So the first Kickstarter took about a year. The second one was a year and a half, almost a year and 3/4 before they could, get their prototypes up and running.
Yeah, I remember the discussions about the molds, and I think that might have been the first Kickstarter. I mean, just all the issues that they had with the molds. Like you said, Jeff, manufacturing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna watch them, and I might. I probably will put an order in for one just to have, to add to the collection. Second thing is Do y'all remember CompuServe?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. I used to be a member guy a long time ago.
Of course. Yeah.
But I remember that's where I used to get a lot of software. There was a section where you could upload your latest program you wrote or whatever. Did anybody ever archive those? Whatever happened to
And
that?
that was all public domain software too. 'Cause
Yeah,
that,
it was
yeah.
like I wrote a application for the QL uh, database program, and I know it was up there. So I just wondered if anybody ever archived any of that, over the years.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have not, and I've looked for.
Oh, you have.
I've looked for exactly that thing, Phil, because I used to use CompuServe as well, and I had like multiple different computer systems at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that anybody did a systematic archive of all of those download sections and all those message boards and stuff like that, unfortunately.
They probably just downloaded what was of interest to them, and
yeah. I know that like for the Tandy Model 100, a bunch of messages and software from the CompuServe like M100 SIG, I think it was called. I know the bunch of that got preserved on some of the Model 100 websites, but I have yet to see anything from the Sinclair world that was
That's mighty impressive that they were able to do that at all.
yeah. Well,
Wonder if did anything like that happen with AOL? I mean, that is so big. Like all those special interest groups.
Well,
yeah.
Who absorbed CompuServe? Wasn't that America Online?
Yeah, AOL
was it?
Yeah, yeah. But then by that point, the I think the SIGs were long gone.
Yeah, that's America Online is where I got all my floppies.
Phil, do you have any other questions?
Like I said, if anybody can think of a repair source for the QL, I got two dead ones that I know of. I think I got spare chips and stuff. I just don't have the skill to go in there and figure out what's wrong with them.
Yeah, I know that I doubt that there's an official, anybody making a living doing that now.
For anybody who's interested and has skills for reading French, there is a ZX81 specific manual on ZX Forth for the Timex Sinclair 20s. Sorry, for the TS-1000.
That's crazy. Was that David? Was that printed in Quebec or France?
No, I believe it was. Let me look at the title page here. Yeah, it was Paris. It was printed in Paris.
Okay.
In 1984.
Wow.
By A. Royer. But if you're interested, what I can do, David, is I can send you the bibliographic information in an email, and you can post it.
Yeah. I'll see if
there was another one for programming Forth, but it was just a general programming Forth, but it seems that it was designed for the ZX, although it doesn't come out there and say it.
Yeah, that looks like a BBC computer on the cover.
BBC computer? Well, don't go by the image.
Don't buy the image. Okay.
Huh, interesting.
And it was published in Belgium.
How crazy.
But I I read through the introduction and stuff, but it doesn't say anywhere for what machine it is. It just seems to assume that it's fig fourth, and fig fourth is fig fourth is fig fourth, no matter what machine it's on. But it still may be useful.
Right, right. Cool.
That does remind me this foreign manual that what I mentioned earlier about watching that video about the person trying to see if that Russian clone of the Spectrum worked. It came with some documentation. It even came with the schematics for the system, which is how he was figuring out which parts needed to be used. But I didn't even know this was available. But he just pointed like his phone, took pictures of the manual, and it read it aloud. And I was like, in English, and I was like, whoa. And it did I mean, maybe it was 100% wrong. I don't know, but it sounded accurate to me,
Wow,
you know?
wow, that's crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
nowadays you can use something like Google Translate, and that's pretty much what you can do with it. You upload a you upload an image of what you want translated, and you highlight it, and you say Russian to English, and it will translate it for you.
Hmm.
But the accuracy is not 100%, although
Yeah.
it is getting better year by year.
Yeah, I've tried that and I actually use it. But this was in I was never aware that something so simple. I mean, it was as simple as click
Right.
and it just started reading it aloud,
That's
you
right.
know.
We should port that back to the 2068.
You do that. That'll be your next talk.
Mm. Well, I'm still going through a lot of if I only knew then what I knew now.
Oh, that's every day, David.
Oh, yeah. Uh, um, yeah, because it turns out that I mean, you can do some pretty wonderful things with the machine. Had you only known at that time that I could actually do such a thing, you know.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, give me an example of what you're talking about.
uh, like I in Pascal, accessing some of the graphics, I didn't know how to access the graphics. But then I got, believe it or not, a book in German called
Wow.
Highsoft Pascal on the ZX Spectrum, and all it was how to access graphics in Highsoft Pascal on the Spectrum. And I'm going, oh my God, it could do that. It could do that. You know what I mean? Real wow. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And
And you know, um, uh, in the original manual, it didn't cover at all how you could make functions that would uh, pass parameters to a ROM routine and call the ROM routine and make it work. You know what I mean? And it was a little bit like, wow,
How did you come across this like German manual? It seems like it would have been hard to discover. Did you discover this in the 80s or much, much later?
Uh, I discovered it. Well, I knew about it about 20 years ago, but I actually got my hands on a copy about 10 years ago.
I see.
Hmm. That's crazy. And
Do you
David,
want to
how did you
see it?
translate it? I mean,
Hmm?
do you read German?
Yeah, I read German.
Oh, well, okay then.
I mean, I
Duh,
took 4 years
David,
of
duh.
German. I took 4 years of German at university, so
Oh, okay.
that was one of the things that was holding me up because I got the I got the book before I'd taken a course in German. So I mean, but believe it or not, there are lots of Spectrum books, especially, and Portuguese. Timex Sinclair, is it called?
Hmm.
Written in Portuguese. There's lots of foreign language material out there in French and Dutch and German.
Hmm.
Somebody
That
was
weren't
telling me,
translated to English, you mean?
hmm?
that were not translated to English, or they're
that were not translated to
really?
English.
That's awesome. I'm gonna get out my phone and start clicking.
So you just got to get the.
Well, a place called Chip. Sorry. A place called Chip Verlag, which is a German outfit, published a lot of stuff for the Sinclair in German, and they did a couple of compilates, like they published two booklets on the best of Chip for the ZX Spectrum, and they also published two best of ZX81 programs, but they're all in German. And there was even a program on how to modify TOSWord 2 to write German characters.
Interesting. So it was it a magazine?
Yeah, Chip is a magazine.
Okay. So there's a Wikipedia page about it. Okay.
That's a rabbit hole, I'm sure.
Yeah, right, exactly. Avoid those as much as we can, because you know what happens.
Yeah.
Adam, do you want to talk about the 1000 manual now? Because Ryan's
No,
here.
I don't have anything to say about it because I mean, I went through it when I first got, I didn't have a 1000 until I met Ryan. I mean, I had one, but I never really had one. I had a broken one back in the early 90s. So I never used one. And then Ryan lent me one, which he won't take back. So it's, and he also gave me, I don't know, let's see if I can read this. He also gave me this cool little, it says keyboard. Can you see this well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little, and just plop it on
Wait a
top.
minute, that's rubbery.
Yeah, it's like, I just plop it on top and I tape it down with some tape. And it's got everything. It's starting to come apart now, but it works perfectly. And when you use it, it's like using a great Spectrum keyboard, which I've never used a Spectrum keyboard, but I've heard, but it actually makes typing much, much easier. Like I wouldn't probably use the 1000 at all if I had to use it with just this proper keyboard.
So,
and that's with Carl like giving me an upgraded keyboard.
So Adam, I've never seen one of those in person. I've only seen pictures.
Oh.
And I assumed that was hard keys, like there's a similar shaped keyboard, a doodad, that another company made. I always assumed that it was hard keys. There's actually one on eBay right now that's people are bidding on. It's only $20, which would be.
Dave, I sent you a TS-1000 with a full travel keyboard.
Yes, that was a different one. We're talking about this little mushy thing that Adam has. Adam, I'm going to spotlight you.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know what to. It's just a little. My 1000 is too far away for me to reach, but everyone knows what a 1000 fits perfectly over it, and I just tape it to it and use it at the time, and then I put it in a little bag to protect it.
That's interesting. That's what was hard because, like I said, I thought that was hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we should ask Ryan where he got it from because I don't know the history of it.
Yeah, Ryan, where'd you get yours? Where'd you get that from?
That was something I think that they ordered when my brother was using my 81 for a time after some years later, after I wasn't using them. He wanted to fool around with it, and I think they ordered that, and then they stuck it to it. It had an adhesive.
Yeah.
Oh, did it? I can't even tell now, actually.
Well, I think I pulled it all off.
I see.
When I pulled that back out, it had been on there. I just left it on there. And when I finally pulled my 81 back out to start to take a look at it, I peeled that off. And then shortly after, when we got it fixed up, then, we fixed up the keyboard, well, we did the old trim the keyboard connector trick, and that worked for a while, and then it kept breaking, and so Carl finally put in the one of I think Stewart's new old stock US keyboard replacements.
Okay. Yeah, so this is what it looks like, attached to a 1000.
Yeah, and I don't know if I think I have in my box here, it came with another just plain black plastic overlay.
Oh, really?
I think notionally you could label for games.
That's a good idea, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the 1000 manual.
Sure. I'm not the one who can talk about it. I'm hoping someone here can talk. It's not like in the last.
Well, if you thought I was going to talk about it, the 1000 manual is not the one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean,
but it's obviously got most of what's in the
right.
The 81
But it's not the
manual
same. When I first got the 1000 or saw the 81 manual, I was expecting it to be, because the manual I have for the 81 is actually Ryan's manual, and I thought they'd be near identical, but they're not near identical.
I don't think that's mine.
Oh, sorry. I even wrote down I got it from Stuart.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
mine's right here.
Ryan, is that where you with the 1000? Is that where you started learning to program, or did you learn somewhere else before?
Basically, I had an interest, and in I think it was 8th grade, junior high. Yeah, it was 8th grade. Me and a friend found we were let to program on the TRS-80 Model I's they had, because that the Fort Worth area was Tandy Town, and so we got some experience there, and of course we were trying to write Space Invaders, of course, and various things, and then we might go to Radio Shack on the weekend, play around a bit, and then I took a couple of courses that Tandy offered locally.
Well, they had their computer centers, didn't they? Like where they would offer classes.
One was like at, I think like, might have been a computer center that was in Tandy. What's it? The Tandy building, what was it called? The Tandy Towers that no longer exists, but and then one during the summer, I think, at one of the computer centers, yeah.
Okay.
And then so I had that familiarity, and then desperately wanted to get a machine of my own, but we couldn't really afford anything, so I figured, well, this ZX81 thing looks like achievable. And so eventually got that, but I got it just as Timex was releasing the 1000, but I didn't know that. And so soon after, you could get the 1000 in stores, and a friend of mine did get one, which ironically was my British friend. So he had the 1000, and then
so he had double the amount of RAM.
Oh, he let me know that all the time. But I kept reminding him, but I've got this RAM pack,
Oh, sure.
And I don't know how long. I think it was around the time the 1500 came out when I got the printer. I think I remember it being on sale, and when we went to get it, I remember seeing the 1500 available, as I remember. And then, of course, so that would have been whenever that was, in mid '83 probably. And then the whole time knowing the Spectrum was out and coming, maybe, sort of, depending on what Timex wanted to do, and we were waiting and waiting. And then got the 2068 that Christmas '83. And I think I was blissfully just programming away on that, ignorant of the announcements that they were getting out of the business, until I think went to one of the computer club meetings some point after Christmas there.
And everyone was crying and, you know, giving each other
Yeah,
hugs.
I don't really remember kind of what the reaction was, but
there was some wailing and gnashing of the teeth. Yes. So Ryan, you had exposure to a more conventional basic, shall we say?
Oh yeah, I mean, I programmed a lot of my friends at Apple IIs, and I did some of that, and the high school had those too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the Apple II had some weird commands like, hplot and stuff like that. Did you find it challenging to grasp Sinclair Basic and its syntax?
I don't recall it being that big of a struggle, and I don't know if that's because it would have been probably only my second basic. I think I might have. I don't know if at that time I'd use another basic other than Tandy.
Okay.
I don't think I'd used, but I might have used the Apple II a little. But I mean, it was very commonly known, as I recall, that the basics differed, but were all very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of magazines that had articles showing you how to go between them, so that when you had to type in program in one dialect, you could probably go back to one of the other issues to find the helper that told you how to translate all those commands.
Yeah, even some of the magazines like Compute Magazine, which covered like the Apples, the Commodores, a lot of the 6502 computers, they would usually have like a master listing, and then underneath it, they'd have the changes to which lines that you'd use for the Apple II version. And so the programs weren't as directly made for the Commodore 64 or for the Apple, so they were kind of generic, maybe a little better than generic, and then they'd tell you what changes you'd make.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sort of translation.
Well, let's look at chapter. What's it? Is that?
You got out through your 1000 manual?
21. I think. It must be chapter number 21, page 97. The TS-1000 for those who understand BASIC. Now, I guess this will be different than what I looked at, but basically, it is going to show you that. As I remember, there's one in the 81 manual. I think that was one of the big helper things that I must have read, and who knows where.
What page did you say? 91 or something?
What was that, David?
What page was that, Ryan?
97, he said.
97. Okay.
Page 97. It's Appendix C in the 81 manual.
Okay, I'm gonna put that on the screen.
Yeah, it's near the end of the 81 manual.
We're all pulling out our books. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it did have it's a couple pages, I think. Well, no, I guess that goes into the kind of review of the commands.
Well, the fact that we did not have read data and restore, we did not have user-defined functions, but val could be used to do some of those. And if you read Sync magazine or Timex Sinclair user, you would get, you'd get a real education in overloading val.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing is that I quickly found that it had some magic over other basics.
Yeah.
I'm still on a quest to figure out about the floating point, because I had always thought that the 5-byte floating point was unique, but it's not.
Oh, you mean their implementation was not unique?
I didn't know for years that the Apple II, the AppleSoft Basic, as near as I can find, is a 5-byte float version of MS Basic, which because they released the MS Basic sources and there's the conditional compiles and you can decide what you wanted, and it was because they couldn't fit the standard BASIC in an 8K ROM or whatever size it was, they were going to have to go bigger on the 6502. Just took more space, so they decided, well, if we're going to go to the next size ROM, we'll go ahead and use the 40 byte floats because we want that precision.
Right.
But for whatever reason, the program that I was trying to make work on the Apple II didn't work because of precision. And then when I ran it on my 2068, it did work.
Oh, how
I'm
interesting.
not sure. It may, I guess that speaks to the math routines, perhaps, but I still don't know why that was the case. So I could, but the val command was the other magic, and well, and then the third one was the on error in the 2068. So between the val and the on error, I was able to make some really fancy graphing programs.
Yeah.
That would impress my friends, and that was the whole point.
Yeah.
You got to be cool.
You know, they were like, I can't do this on my Apple II. I'm like, well, you should buy a cheaper computer, maybe.
Maybe you should buy a better computer. Yeah. I will tell you, I read this thing back and forth a bunch of times as a kid, and I found chapter 25 to be woefully inadequate. And chapter 25 is using machine code, and it's generous to call it 2 pages worth of material. and bizarrely, the expansion slot connector is in the machine code chapter.
Well, David, it does say right away, even in the first paragraph, it does say this, you need these other books.
You do need the other books.
Yeah, it says get these
Yes.
books. We're not going to teach you how to program in machine language. It says immediately. So
Right. And so,
Yeah.
I went from there. I was like, okay, I'm doing the best I can. And I would go from there to I think it was like the character set appendix on like 137, which lists both the character set and the
C80 mnemonic.
The Z80 mnemonics, right? And after CB and after ED, it took me a long time. Of course, I was like 14. It took me a long time to figure out what they meant by after CB and.
Oh yeah, that was always a mystery.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I always felt like, why is this even in here? It felt like if I knew what I needed to know, I don't need this chapter. It was just sort of a tease. And I think maybe it's more of like, yeah, you probably, if you know how like a Z80 works, you might have gotten this machine because it had a Z80. And the rest of this manual is to teach you how this Z80 system works.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the innards, you don't need anything else other than like, okay, what's the bus pinout and some other things.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I have a question. As whenever you mentioned the printer, so it's like everyone's got the little, AlphaCom, whatever you want to call it.
I don't have one. Not everyone.
Talk to David. He has.
Yeah, Adam, we can hook you up.
Did anyone
I'm
ever
okay.
hook up the Centronics parallel interface? Because I had a IBM Pro Printer 2, and it worked great. But you had to set the dip switches for whatever you wanted, and you had to put in the code. You could see, like, oh, this is bold, and then turn off bold. Okay, it was that low level, so to speak. I don't know if anyone else ever had that. That's what I was looking for, to maybe getting that going again. But yeah, they're the Pro Printer 2s. They're over $300.
Mm.
Wow.
So, Paul, you're talking about the was this on the 1000 or the 2068 that you hooked it up to?
2068.
Okay, and so what did you use for an interface? Did you use one of those ones that plugged into the cartridge port?
No. One of the two guys, Larkin
or Airco,
their expansion board.
Okay.
And then with one of these, then I put the plug on top and I went over to the dot matrix printer.
Oh, probably Oliger then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean,
also known as a mess of wires.
I do remember, on pretty much every system you had to do that, right? Like if you wanted bold, you would have to say lprint and then the character code for bold or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. It was a lot of effort. It was a lot of typing. Even with the Sinclair Basic, it was a lot of typing.
Yes. Yeah. But it worked. I was amazed. It worked. It was great. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone else ever did that.
Did it print 80 columns or did it print 40 columns? I'm curious. Do you remember if it was full width or?
No, actually, I think I was using the in-between, 64.
Okay.
The 64 column.
Okay.
Software. It's been a while. Gosh.
Yeah. Well, David, you're talking about like the codes that you'd have to put in. But when I was using WordPerfect like 4 or something like that on DOS on an 8088 machine back in the late 80s, like you had to put in the codes, and even then sometimes you would there'd be codes you'd want to do. There was a command to show the codes.
Yep.
Because there'd be codes you couldn't see.
Yep.
And you needed to see them.
Yes.
And it was a long time before we got to where we were or where we are now. It was a long time.
Right. What you see is what you get, plus all the things you can't see.
Right.
I was gonna say WordPerfect on a DOS machine, then luxury.
Right. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, I did well before. I did have the printer, but of course you can't take one of those, one of these things to your teacher.
Oh, sure.
So basically what I would do is I'd use TazWord just to edit. And then I print it out, and then I would just simply type just the final version onto the typewriter.
Oh my gosh. So couldn't you just photocopy it onto a larger page?
Have you seen those characters at 64 fake columns?
Okay, I'm just saying.
Yes. How many characters look like an M and yeah, okay.
M or an H,
Oh gosh.
That wouldn't fly. So yeah, it was you just did all your editing and then once you had it set down and just type it once.
So Adam, you reminded me of this old bit of Unix humor, Unix/help desk humor about the 9 types of users, and in specific, there was this one called the Mad Bomber, and the joke is that person comes in and says, well, I hit Alt F6, Shift F8, Control F10, F4, and F9, and now it all looks weird. And you open up their WordPerfect document, and it turns out that they have set and unset underline more than 50 times in the document. Yeah, WordPerfect was amazing that way.
Yeah, it was something. Yeah.
Well,
but it was better. I'd come from crap, so it was better than what I had. Yeah.
Well, clearly you didn't have
WordStar codes, but I mean, it's not really different than what happens now. You just don't see those codes.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. You still would say, I guess the process was different. You would turn it on and go and turn it off. You don't have the select the range with the mouse and then just say make bold, but that winds up doing the same thing in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What is funny is that was a hand-me-down computer to my mom, who handed it down to me, and I remember the person who had bought it originally had paid like $400 for WordPerfect. Yeah. It was like a very, very expensive program. It was that was not including the computer, of course. So it was
meant for office productivity, but just like the way the PC is that the people would start, well, I know WordPerfect, so I'll need to use it. So somehow I'm going to have to you know, if I can justify that I use that at work and I have a copy at home, I could do that. But then the whole idea of using a simpler program to do simpler jobs is like, yeah, but I know that more complex program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna I have to learn another program to do this, and so that's how a friend of mine justified back in the day buying a Windows NT machine for his home. You know, it's like, well, that's what I use at work, and you know, but um, I did happen upon their other product, which was called Letter Perfect.
Yeah, what was that?
And it was just a more basic word processor. I don't recall its compatibility with WordPerfect documents, but it was way simpler. And you could just go in there and use Control B for bold and a bunch of sensible things for most documents you'd ever want to mess with. But I don't remember how much it cost or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, the WordPerfect thing, everything was on the function keys, and nearest I can tell is that was to avoid colliding with control keys for terminals, perhaps.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Well, and WordStar used control keys.
Right.
So that was, you know, maybe a thing.
But it came from a terminal days.
Yeah. Ryan, you mentioned using what was it? TazWord?
Yeah, I had TazWord 2 for the 2068.
When and did you get that from, you know, some vendor? How did you get that?
Probably the user group.
Okay.
Why was it hard to get, or?
Oh, look at that.
Oh.
Phil's got the package. Yeah, I mean, was yours like a package version, or was it just like
No,
a liberated cassette?
I think it was a demo.
A demo. Okay.
Yeah. You only could type 2 pages.
I've got a photocopy of a manual, yeah. And then also I had the TazWide utility.
Yeah.
Which I used quite a bit. You know, it's just a little bit of code and it's pretty easy to use.
Did you and what did you have for a printer?
The 2040.
A 2040. Okay. So if you needed to print out you know, your paper, I mean, I assume you use it to write papers or something, right? And you needed to print that out. What did you do? I mean, did you print it on the 2040 and at 64 columns on the 2040?
Yeah.
No.
Well, like I said, I didn't really do that much at that time. I didn't need to do a lot of papers.
Okay.
Because that was basically high school. And so it was either they were just either handwritten essay kind of things or typed up. And so basically, yeah, I would, like I said, I didn't use it for many years, but you know, I would just edit it in TazWord and then print it out. And it's 64 columns, set the margins on the typewriter and just type the characters as they were, knowing that would work out.
Oh,
it'd be a pretty easy typing job. I don't think I did that ever very many times though.
That's crazy. Okay.
But you know, because otherwise, I could say those things that one, you know, a real printer was expensive, and I'd have to get some sort of crazy apparatus add-on that was also expensive.
Yes.
To connect to it.
Yeah.
You know, so the guys, a lot of the, you know, I was always typically the youngest guy in the user groups. So I was pretty much the youngest guy in the user group, the Timex user group. They were all older, you know, they were, you know, so they might have, I don't remember exactly, but you know, they would have had these other systems because they had money and jobs and justification for, you know, having that stuff. And I didn't, like, I don't need a disk system. It'd be nice, but I don't have any business I was trying to run either. So
yeah. Interesting. Okay. Very cool. I'm gonna do the atom because it's almost 5 to 4. Our next meeting is Monday, July 7th. That's a Monday. I just said that part. Which means it's at 9 p.m. Eastern. And you know, for folks like Ryan, it's at a more reasonable hour than 9 p.m.
Wait, what'd you say? A different time?
Oh no, Monday, Paul. Monday meetings are at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Our time. Yeah. Okay.
And you know, Ryan is in Albuquerque, and so it's what, 2 hours, Ryan? Or
2
3?
hours.
2 hours. Okay. Yeah. Far more reasonable for him. Us on the East Coast, we have to stay up late. Sometimes past our bedtimes. Anybody want to get any last comments in? Any last questions?
Well, all good. Thank you for including me. I appreciate it.
No, that's why we're here. Absolutely. You know, come hang out with us more often.
Yeah. Whenever you're talking up here, it's like,
well, so Paul, you actually mentioned something that I would love to hear more about in the future, and that is the game playing, because I mean, I know what games I played on you know, computers back then. But I would love to know, you know, what games that, you know, you found the 2068 and even the 1000 well suited to, you know, because the 1000 was not exactly speedy.
no.
And
Well,
know,
you could control how fast you wanted it.
with the fast and slow command.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
But you must
right.
always had it in the slow.
I always had it in slow.
Oh, there was one game that my friends and I did whenever I was in San Diego. So I brought everything from East Coast to West Coast. It's not asteroids, but you had to go and blow up things and then collect letters. Gosh, I can't think of a name. And it was just level after level. And so you finally build up this whole matrix of a message. Okay. And you keep, but you had to fly everything around and you'd make sure on cassette, save a lot just in case you got blasted out of the sky. And I'm going to have to figure out what the name of that was. I'll email it to everyone in the group. That was like, I played that all the time.
What was the message? Drink your Ovaltine?
No, but eventually you got to the level where you got higher and higher. So you wanted to become the creator. Okay. So you started as a person, and you know, like I said, it was really amazing. And then, because the letters are all scrambled. And if you didn't unscramble it correctly, right? So that's why just before you start that, you'd say, and then you try to unscramble it, and that released you to the next level. Okay. It's like you're flying around like in asteroids, but it's not asteroids. And I can't for the life of me remember the name. I'll send it out in an email group or group email.
Well, like Ryan, I was a teenager and could barely afford anything. And my favorite game was some type-in program from a Timex Sinclair user, which was the game was a space. I think it might have been called Phaser or something like that. But it was a space simulator, right? And little periods where the stars and little O's with parentheses on them were I think the bad guys that you were trying to shoot. And if I recall correctly, you had to type in the letter for the column or something. It was bizarre because it was a type-in program. It was, you know, not a joystick program. However, the part that I liked about it was when you hit something, it would use alternating fast and slow commands to make the screen jump. You know, like you know, you were, you know, in a spaceship and you hit something and everything was wrong.
Is that what happens in a spaceship when you hit something?
That's what I was led to believe by that documentary called Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah, from Hollywood, it has to be true.
That's right. If it was a movie that I saw, in the theater, it had to be real.
Yes, gotcha.
Yeah, I recommend. I came recently upon the port of Phoenix to the. I forgot if it was the Spectrum. I think it's the Spectrum. I don't remember if it was a 2068 version too. I think it's spelled with two E's. It's a pretty good port, and the way they did it really avoids the color attribute clash quite a bit.
Oh,
so it looks pretty good.
Ryan, can you send a link to that in the email group?
Yeah, I'll have to look. I can't remember if I posted about that or not. I might have.
I don't remember hearing about it.
I don't remember
reading
seeing
it.
that. Yeah, I would have paid attention.
I might have forgotten to post it. That's totally possible.
Yeah, that's another.
So my dog had gotten out a minute ago, and so did I miss, like, we skipped on to
You missed the announcement for the next
like we're
meeting?
talking about typing games. Is that what's going on here?
Well, I was thinking I wanted Paul to come back so we could talk about playing games on the 1000 and the 2068 because
I see.
I was not a big game player,
Right?
and Paul, was one of those folks for whom, all those features that got added to the 2068, the joysticks, the sound, the cartridge port. That's who Timex, had in mind with those additions, and so, I would love to talk more about playing games in one of our future meetings.
Yeah. Speaking of future meetings, it looks
we already
like
did that, Adam.
Oh, did you?
While you were chasing your dog, yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was bad. But that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say I'll be missing some of the meetings coming up because I go into the hospital on July 2nd for a week to 4 weeks.
Oof,
so
okay.
It'll be a while, and I'm not going to be having a Zoom meeting while I'm in bed.
Understandable. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Hope everything is okay.
What's that?
Hope everything is okay.
Yeah, I'm getting an SCEEG, if anyone knows what that is. So they're gonna put some holes in my skull, or 19 of them, in fact, and put leads into my brain, and they'll check out my brain, and then I have maybe at some point I'll have a tumor removed. So
Will they
see
find
how
out
that goes.
that you are actually the smartest person in the room?
I hope not, but but because I don't want the dumbest person in the room to be the person operating. So it could be an interesting time. So,
Right.
but it does remind me earlier. Someone here mentioned the microsurgeon, and like if made him feel like a microsurgeon opening up the computer. Was it you, Paul?
Yes, that was
Yeah.
me.
Well, there was a game by Magic released on the Intellivision called that, and you would go inside of a person, like Fantastic Voyage, the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was like that, but it was a ripoff of that. So you were a microsurgeon with a ship, and you're going inside the arteries and like opening up blood clots and things.
I don't know if that is enough to make suffering the Intellivision controllers.
Hey, man, it was a different time. It was a very different time.
All right, gentlemen. See you in 2-ish weeks, I think it is.
Okay.
Have fun, Adam. Fingers crossed for you.
Thank you, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.
Good luck.